Shalom, everyone. Welcome back to another Wednesday night. I decided to do something less complicated. I guess that's the good word to use at this point, is the idea. I want to talk to you about angels. And as I was going through what I'm going to talk about, my wife asked me about the angels we're going to talk about. The title that I gave to this lesson is called The Mysterious Angel of Exodus. And we're going to talk about an angel in Exodus 26, verses 20 and 21. And the angel is called Metatron. And we're going to put that idea of that Jewish thought in your mind today. So as I'm reading it, the words are, below or behold, I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the land that I have prepared. Be aware of him and obey him. Do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your transgressions. For my name is within him. You know, God says he is sending a very special angel with the people while they go through this wilderness and end up in the promised land. And what is more important is that God has placed within this angel his name. Now, the frustrating part of it all is the fact that we are never told exactly what the name of this angel is. If it wasn't for the Talmud, we would never know, because it's the Talmud that actually gives us an understanding. In the Talmud, in the Gematria for this, I forgot where I got it from. Anyway, excuse me, but the Gematria relates a certain heretic said to Rav Adit, "It is written in the verse concerning God, and to Moses he said, come up to the Lord," which is Exodus 24:1. And the heretic raised a question. It should have stated, "Come up to me." And Rav Adit said to him, this term, the Lord, in that verse is referring to an angel, the angel Metatron, whose name is like the name of the master, as it is written, behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Take heed of him, obey his voice, and do not defy him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Now the text is going to go, it goes on to say that the heretic said to him, if so, if this angel is equated with God, we should worship him as we worship God. Now, Ravadid said to him, it is written, do not defy, and the word defy is the word tamer, do not defy him, which alludes to, do not replace me, which is tamerin, with him. And the heretic said to him, if so, why do I need the clause, for he will not pardon your transgressions? And Rav said to him, we believe that we did not accept the angel even as a guide for the journey as it is written. And he said to him, if your presence goes not with me, raise us not up from here. So this is in Exodus chapter 33, verse 15, where the conversation continued. But the understanding that I have at this point in time is the fact that we think of God going with his people. And yet, here in the text, it begins by telling us that an angel goes with them. But this angel is very special. This angel has the name of God within him. Now, according to the rabbis, the name of this character is Metatron. But what's the problem with his name being Metatron? Well, how is his name? Metatron is not one of the 72 names of God. It's not even hinted at in the names. So how could they possibly have come up with this conclusion? Well, eventually Moses is told that the angel that would accompany them was Metatron, and is one of the most mysterious and puzzling figures in Jewish mysticism, whose origin and nature vary depending on the source. Now, in the book Guide of Moses, there's this midrashic account that Metatron is the angel who guided Moses, even taught him Torah while he was in heaven during those 40 days. Now, he holds a great place, particularly in Kabbalah and Merkava. Now, Merkava there are two strains of Kabbalah. One is the strain called creation, where everything in Kabbalah deals with creation. I shouldn't say everything. Things deal with creation. The other is Merkava, which is the idea of the mysterious chariot that we see in Ezekiel chapter 1. How is the name Metatron to be seen in God's name? Well, the gematria of Metatron is 314. And the gematria of God's name, Shaddai, which means enough, is also 314. It is often described as the highest of the angels, a celestial scribe, and sometimes even as a lesser divine being or an angelic manifestation of God's presence. That's what Metatron is, and that's why they call him that. Now, you probably figured out that Shaddai deals with an aspect of God's four-letter name, not with any of the four letters, because the four letters are Yud, He, Vav, He, and Metatron has none of those letters in it. But you need to remember that the names of the angels were often adapted from non-Jewish sources, such as the name Metatron. Metatron is not Hebrew. The Jerusalem Talmud in Rosh Hashanah 6a says the true names of the angels were concealed to keep people from being able to summon them. Metatron is Greek, not Hebrew. Metatron is the original language which would have said Metathronos, which roughly translates he's near or after the throne. Now, understand then that this character is, well, his name isn't really Metatron. And we also have to understand, well, do you remember Jacob? Jacob was worried about Esau. And so when he arrived back in the land after spending those years away, he sent messengers to Esau. Well, before his messengers would arrive, they came back telling him that he's on his way with 400 men. So the messengers became very important. But what is the word messenger in Hebrew? It's melech, or angel. So Jacob had the understanding or the ability to send angels ahead. But that's not what we're going to. Gershom Scholem, who recently passed away, was a renowned scholar. And he searched the ancient records and he concluded that Metatron's real name is Yeho-El. Now, El speaks of God, but he is Yeho-El. And Yeho means the lesser. So Yeho-El is the lesser God. And in some texts, Metatron was an angel that preceded creation. Now, we've always been told that there was nothing before creation except God and Torah. But here, some of the texts will say that he was there. Now, he assisted in bringing about physical universe, is what they said he was responsible for. Now, this hints at the role of as a mediator between God and creation. That was part of his position or part of what he was going to do. And I'm going to give you some understandings of all the things that he was responsible for. Now, this idea is dangerous because it allows for us to think of there being multiple gods. In fact, that was what caused one man to be known as Acher. He was going to go into idolatry, and he was actually going to become an atheist, not believing in God. He was one of the four rabbis that were able to go all the way to paradise. Now, the Kabbalist draws some understanding of who Metatron was in the writings of Enoch. Now, you remember I gave a small lesson on Enoch and on the Watchers. Well, this is a different character that's not mentioned there, but it is mentioned in the book of Enoch, in the third book, And it's also mentioned in the Zohar, the third book of Zohar, 189a. So for this, we need to look back at, actually, according to the Zohar, we need to go back to Genesis chapter 5, verse 23 and 24. And it's there we read, and all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was no longer, for God had taken him. Okay, so Enoch never died, but was taken up where God transformed him into the angel we call Metatron, according to the Zohar. This is also found, and again, I quoted the third Enoch, but it's actually the second Enoch. This is the Enoch that was written in a Slavic language. Remember, there were 3 Enoch books. One is in ancient Aramaic, one is in Slavic, and the other one is in a Greek language, which describes how Enoch was given a new celestial body. He was also given a throne, and he had vast knowledge. He is the angel that walks with God, and he is the one God sent to the earth to lead the people to the promised land. That's according to the Zohar, the third book, 189a. Now, I need to share something with you at this point in time. You see, I need to share that there have been those who have rejected the idea that Enoch became an angel, and among them was a man named Onkelos, who was a nephew of a Caesar. Now, Onkelos said Enoch was no more because God killed him. Now, some Kabbalists held a similar view and believed that there were 2 Metatrons. That's why he could be killed in Onkelos' case. And when Enoch arrived, his body was fused to one of the Metatrons as his soul reached the highest level possible in Adam. Now remember, we're all from Adam. Every one of us is a part of the soul of Adam. And so what they're saying is Metatron, Enoch, became part of that fused being to Adam. Now, if you want the Hebrew understanding, it's called Zahara Ilah Ah. Now, for the record, there are 2 men in Jewish history who became angels, Enoch and Elijah, who also has an angelic name, Sandalphon, which is not Hebrew, but it's actually Greek, and we'll get into that later when I talk about him. You see, I want to give you an understanding of some interesting characters that have very little mention in the scriptures. And we oftentimes wonder where they come from. Well, anyway, Jewish writing also speaks of 2 angels being transformed being transformed from angels to humans, Shemahaze and Azazel. Remember, those were the angels that were supposedly, according to the Sanhedrin, they were the ones that were actually caused the flood to come by intermarrying with all of the women and changing the world at that point in time. Now, he, Metatron, is believed to be the highest angel. He's also known as a celestial scribe. Why? Well, it's because of his position and what he was responsible for. He was responsible for recording all the deeds of humanity. He was also responsible for overseeing the archives and transmitting divine wisdom to everyone. He was a scribe, he was a guardian of secrets. This is related to us in another writing called Sar HaPanim, the Prince of Divine Presence. In Kabbalistic cosmology, Metatron is associated with the Sephira of Keter, which is the crown. It's the highest point. Oftentimes I've shown you the chart, and you can see it's got 10 portions. Metatron is considered the crown. It's the top. It's the extent of everything to that point. It's also known as Yesod, which is down near the bottom. It's in the groin, and the groin is the keeper of the secrets. So that's why it's there. Now he has been seen as the bridge between two worlds, between the world above and the world below. That's his function. He's often considered to be an intermediary between the divine realm, which is called Atzilut, and the realms below it, which is Beriah, which is the world of creation, Yetzirah, which is the world of formation, and Asiya, which is the world we're in, the world of action. Now, this idea is found in 2nd Enoch, and it describes how Enoch was given a new celestial body. He was given a throne and a vast knowledge that he didn't have before. He's also linked with Leviathan, the serpent, and he's also linked with Nahash. So what does he have in common with Leviathan and Nahash? It goes back to the understanding of Yesod. He knows secrets. Now, the Leviathan is often seen as a chaotic force. Some esoteric interpretations suggest that Metatron and Leviathan represent two sides of the divine knowledge. One is structured and revelatory, and the other is hidden and it's abysmal. So the structured one and the revelation one is Metatron. But the hidden and the abysmal, that's Leviathan, the opposite side of the coin. Now, some mystical traditions make subtle connections between Metatron and Nahash. Nahash is the serpent that's found in Genesis chapter 3, not as a figure of evil, but as being of deep esoteric knowledge that the serpent, or the Nahash, whichever way you want to call it, had a great deal of knowledge. First off, he was able to speak. In other words, he has communication skills, and he was more cunning than any of the other beings created before it. Now, since Metatron is associated with secret wisdom, some see a paradoxical link between him and the primordial serpent of Eden. He's often depicted as recording the deeds of humanity. Now, when we were in the church, we used to believe, and I say that when we were in the church, we used to believe God had our names written down in the book of life, and all of our deeds were recorded there. Well, that's the job of Metatron, overseeing the archives, transmitting divine wisdom to others. Now, the concept of Metatron's seat connects deeply with the idea of angelic thrones in Jewish mysticism, particularly regarding his role as the Prince of the Presence. We normally think there's only one throne in heaven. That's the throne upon which God sits. But there were actually other lesser thrones, one of which was for Metatron so that he could record. That was his function. He was not to spend his days in there, but he was to record and then move out. Now, earlier I said that Metatron's most logical Hebrew name was Yahoel, which translates as either the breath of God or the face of God's presence. In other words, Metatron is in many ways a greater presence than all of the archangels combined. Metatron, as the Sar Ha'apim, well, anyway, how do I want to put this? The title refers to an angel who stands before God in the highest of heavens, closest to God. This title is significant because it suggests extreme proximity to the divine, and only a select few angels are able to do. So he's near the Ketzei Kavod, which is the divine throne, and he's a being of his presence, which places Metatron in the category of beings that we normally refer to as the Hayot HaKodesh, or the holy beast, the four wheel, or the four beasts that surround the throne. Some associate him with the Orphanim, the wheels, because the wheels are not wheels as you would find on a chariot. The wheels are actual beings. Ophanim. That's where he would have been, circling around God. Now, from Ezekiel's vision, in 1, Metatron surrounds God's throne. Well, how do you surround it unless you're in motion around it? He's an Ophanim. He's an Ophan. Now, in various mystical sources, Metatron is described as having a throne of his own. But this must be understood within the framework of angelic hierarchy rather than divine kingship. He was said to occupy the throne of Sarhapin. In the 3rd book of Enoch, it states that Metatron sits on a seat like God's throne. But this does not mean equality with God. Instead, this throne signifies his role as a mediator between the divine and the lower worlds. It aligns with the idea that Metatron is a heavenly scribe recording all actions of humanity. Now, Metatron versus the Ophanim, how do I want to put this? Some traditions identify him not as a wheel, but as actually one of the four beasts, making him one of the closest things to the chariot as it's moving. Now, this could explain why he appears to sit and sitting on a throne, maybe because of the extension of the Merkava, how close he is to it. Metatron and the throne judgments. In Kabbalah, there are multiple thrones in the upper worlds, often associated with judgment, Kisei Hadin, and it's used for divine justice. But there's also a throne called Kisei Ha-Rakmim, which is the throne of mercy. And that's used to define divine compassion. Metatron's throne sometimes seems to be an intermediary station where human souls or angels are judged before reaching the higher thrones. That comes in the book of Zohar, in the 1st book, in page 4b, and suggests that Metatron's seat is not for his own rulership, but for him to receive and then transmit divine degrees to others. So, now this seat is in the heavenlies, and it's associated with Metatron, and it has purpose. In fact, if we go back to, again, in the Talmud, in Haggadah 15a, I alluded to the fact that there was 4 rabbis who entered paradise. Rabbi Akiva was the first one. He came back and he talked with 3 other rabbis and convinced them to go with him, which suggested that one of the rabbis, when it's all said and done, his name was Elisha ben Avaya, who would be called Acher, one from the other side. He saw the chair that Metatron occupied, and he decided that he must be a divine authority. Now, why was he accused if he was a great rabbi? Metatron has a seat, but it is not a seat of divine authority. It's a position of servitude, meditation, and recording divine decrees. The Zohar suggests that only God sits in the absolute authority, but Metatron, because of his scribe role, was seen as being seated, but it was for a different function. Metatron's throne should be seen as a seat of divine energy and transmission rather than rulership. There's a story that says that Metatron's responsibility was to send back messages into secrets to those who had been praying to him. Sandalphon was the other angel I'm going to talk to you about next week. Sandalphon was responsible for collecting the messages, correcting our mistakes, increasing the intensity of them, and making them sound as though we were seriously pleading with God or thanking God. When his message arrived, it was taken to the throne by Sandalphon, and the message was returned through Metatron. So we have two angels who actually were human beings at one point in time. One sending the messages up, one sending the messages down. Those were the things that we actually saw. I don't want to go any farther, although I've only gone for a half hour, but I thought it was a good half hour that I gave you. So I want you to think about at this point in time what I've really just shared with you. How many of you actually have heard of Metatron? Only a couple? Interesting. So it's a good thing I talked about it. Now, next week, like I said, I want to talk to you about Sandalphon, who actually was Elijah. And so we're going to get to understand how these angels are interacting today. Quite different, yet at the same point in time, it helps to explain their spiritual level before they left. Spiritually, they were on the level of Adam before the fall. That was their level. That's worship-wise. Intellectually, they were nowhere close to that. They gained that with time and understanding from God. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask if you have any questions or any thoughts that you'd like to add to what I've already shared. I think I've shared some information none of you knew before, but now you're more familiar with what these characters are. Next week, I will do Sandalphon. The week after that, I'm going to do the Angel of Death. And after that, well, after that, we'll see. But that's what my plan is for the next couple of weeks. The lessons are going to be shorter because I want to pack in as much as I can to one focus. In this case, it's the focus of Metatron. The idea that Metatron was Enoch. Enoch was who he is. Nobody seems to disagree with that. The disagreement comes with the understanding of how he became, if he became. The only person that I remember ever seeing was Ankylos. He's the only one who seems to disagree with everybody, but that's okay. Everybody has a choice. When you read the Talmud, if you read the Talmud, you've got access to it if you go to Chabad. Chabad gives you all of the books of the Talmud. And so you can go from whatever page to whatever page, and it gives you a clear writing of that particular subject or whatever it is they're talking about. But we also have to remember the Talmud is not a book where it gives you every right answer. It actually deals with opposites. People have opinions. Those opinions are leveled at each other. And it's up to us to, again, sort through and begin to identify where we understand or what we understand. So I quit talking, but I just kept talking. So I'm going to quit talking again and say, has anybody got anything they'd like to add or a question that they like to bring up?